noon, they called for major changes in police tactics. They say they have an answer from the mayor to share to the public as protests over police brutality are expected to continue later today. We will have more on a press conference happening this hour coming up on the news at noon. But first, breaking this midday, big news from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We already knew the Brickyard 400 would be run this year with NASCAR resuming their schedule. But we now know that you will not be able to go to see that race in person because of the ongoing pandemic. Sports Director Dave First joining me right now on FaceTime, that is. Dave, let's talk a little bit how there will be no fans in the stands at IMS for this year's NASCAR races.
Yeah, I know the marketing staff and everyone over at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Mark Miles, Doug Bowles, they were really looking forward to hosting the Brickyard 400 for the first time over the July 4th weekend. That announcement came last fall after having the race. You may recall the last couple of years in September, the move to the July 4th weekend. They were going to do a lot of marketing with it, PR, certainly surrounding the 4th of July and patriotism and whatnot. But the fact that they don't know the Speedway in Marion County, Joe Hogsett, the mayor as well, doesn't know if they'll be at stage 5 yet in Marion County. That is when you can allow fans and sports venues to open up. They don't know. The rest of the state may be in stage 5, but Marion County may not be, and they had to make a call, and they did so today. Take a look at a statement released from Mark Miles, who, of course, is the Penske Entertainment president and CEO, saying, quote, "While we certainly worked diligently to run our events with spectators, we reached a point where we needed to make a final decision because the race weekend is less than a month away. Today, it's not possible to be confident that Indianapolis will be at stage 5 of the state's reopening plan by that 4th of July weekend." Remember, the 4th of July is that Saturday. The GMR IndyCar Grand Prix was set to run on the road course. The Xfinity race from NASCAR was going to run on the road course. And that Sunday, July 5th, would have been the 27th running of the Brickyard 400. Still will be. Just fans won't be allowed in. That does beg the question, though, what about the Indianapolis 500, which has already been postponed back to an August 23rd date? There's still a lot of head scratching going on 16th and Georgetown about whether or not that is going to happen. A lot of hope as well. But if that doesn't happen with fans, and they are bound and determined to have the Indianapolis 500 with fans, whether it's social distancing, mask, whatever, they're bound and determined to have that. So if that doesn't happen, there is still a date in October that they may rely on as well. But then you get into colder temperatures, fear that the pandemic may have a second wave by then. So there's a lot of variables going on right now. But what we know for sure right now is that the Brickyard 400 will happen. It will just not happen with fans here in 2020. Meredith.
Dave, thank you. Some disappointing news there for anyone who was looking forward to that. We do have some good news for you, however, and that is coming from Todd Clausen. Todd, the sun is shining right now. We thought we were going to have rainfall all throughout the day. The good news is, though, the sun is out.
Yeah, it's good and it's bad, right, Meredith? The sun's coming out, so the skies are starting to brighten, but it's that sunshine that's going to help to lead to additional storms that are going to flare up here later on this afternoon. Here's a look from IMS back towards downtown Indianapolis on the Weather Now camera network, and we have the hazy sunshine out there, and we do have some rain still across parts of central Indiana, and I am expecting more storms to start to build in. Some light rains falling from Shelbyville over towards the Greensburg area, and then down to the south, some more stronger storms and a little bit of lightning there in the Seymour area. And as we work our way throughout the afternoon hours, think of the sunshine as kind of fuel for these storms. We have the humidity around, we have the temperatures and all the instability. So I am expecting more storms to flare up as the afternoon progresses. Now, most of them, I think, should be from Indianapolis down to the south and off towards the east. That's the best likelihood of the storms because it's a little closer to the cold front, but isolated storms are still possible north of Indianapolis, and the storms that do flare up will have the potential maybe to be borderline strong to severe. We're in the mid-70s, but it's extremely humid, going up to the mid-80s later on this afternoon. Still, we'll talk about the threats with the storms in more detail for you coming up in just a little bit.
Todd, thank you. New this midday, thousands of Hoosiers are still applying for unemployment benefits, even as the state makes moves to slowly reopen from the COVID-19 pandemic. Here are the newest numbers from the Department of Labor. More than 23,000 people in Indiana applied for unemployment for the first time last week. The good news is that is down slightly from the previous week. However, it's still more than 6 times the number of claims typically filed in the state before the pandemic. Since companies began laying off workers 11 weeks ago, more than 727,000 Hoosiers have filed for unemployment. A man arrested for the shooting of another man downtown shortly after last weekend's protests is now formally charged with murder. Today, Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears announced the charges against 29-year-old Tyler Newby. Police say Newby shot 18-year-old Dorian Morrell in the stomach during an argument Saturday near Market in Pennsylvania. So far, investigators have not said what led to that argument. Indy Pride had already canceled its in-person events for Pride Month because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the group says it will show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement by no longer using police departments for security at future events. In a statement today, Indy Pride said that police departments will only be allowed to provide support blocking traffic at future Indy Pride festivals, but will not be permitted to participate in the festival's events. Indy Pride also says it will cancel most of the virtual events it had scheduled for this month. The only event it will hold will be the Indy Pride Virtual Festival on June 20th. The top health doctor in Marion County says she's concerned about a spike in COVID-19 because of the recent large demonstrations. Rafael Sanchez also asked her about the state's decision to expand testing at nursing homes.
Soon, all nursing home staff will get tested for COVID-19. Is that a good step? Do you
Oh, yes. So I think that's a great step. And we will look very carefully at what the state is recommending and try to make sure that we're trying to follow their guidelines. And I think that's a good step.
We're seeing a number of protests and demonstrations across Marion County. Are you concerned at all?
Yes.
In light of the fact that we were the hot spot for the state, that you may see a spike if people are not socially distancing and not wearing face masks?
If you're not wearing a mask and you're not doing social distancing, especially if we're having visitors come from outside the state joining our protesters, you have to be concerned that there could be an increase in COVID-19 cases. So there's always that possibility, and we will have to monitor that very carefully. The advantage that we have is that the protest is done outdoors, where you have a significant amount of ventilation just from being in an outdoor setting as opposed to an indoor setting. But yes, we would like you to wear face coverings. Rafael, the other thing that we will look for is, a lot of times symptoms may start in 5 days from now. So in the next 5 days to 14 days, which is our quarantine period, we will try to monitor and look to see if we're seeing a peak in cases that may pop up.
Rafael Sanchez with that report. Dr. Kane passed out free face coverings during the protests in an effort to protect people against the spread of the virus. He now says his comments were insensitive. Coming up, the apology from a former Purdue star the day after he upset a lot of people, including some of his own teammates. Todd.
And Meredith, we're starting to see the clouds break here across central Indiana for some sunshine. That does not mean, though, that we are done with the rainfall for the remainder of today. More storms are expected, and they could be strong to severe. We'll talk about the timeline and also the impacts coming up when the news at noon continues right here on RTV6.
Best of the Nurses Ball this week on ABC.
They took their calls for major law enforcement reforms to the steps of the State House last weekend. Today, a large group of the city's religious leaders is gathering again, calling for an end to what they call state-sanctioned violence. Our Megan Santorum is live outside the City County building downtown. That is where leaders of the group Faith in Indiana plan to talk about their conversations with the mayor. Megan.
Yeah, that's right. If you take a look over here, you can see a lot of faith leaders in this city have gathered. This press conference should start any minute here. Now, as you mentioned, they created a law enforcement agenda that they would like to see the city implement. It has 7 main points. Some of those include the city reviewing their use of force policy, de-escalating training, and requiring independent investigations of police violence. Of course, all of this comes as protests continue across the nation after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But faith leaders with this group are also looking locally. They say they're also focusing in on Drejon Reed's case and Aaron Bailey's case from a couple of years ago. Now, they sent that plan of action that they would like to see to the mayor, and they are going to share the mayor's response here any minute. So we're just waiting for that to get started here. You can see there are a lot of faith leaders. Some of them have signs. We see a Black Lives Matter sign, Live Free. Once again, this group is called Faith in Indiana. And it is a lot of faith leaders from our area. And we may send it back to you, Meredith. We will check back in a couple minutes. If you want to catch this press conference, we will be streaming it live on Facebook and the IndyChannel.com. Reporting live, Megan Sanctorum, RTV6.
Megan, thank you very much. Once again, that will be streaming live on the WRTV Facebook page right now. This gathering today comes one day after the family of Drejon Reed demanded more answers from IMPD in connection to his shooting death at the hands of police almost 1 month ago. Reed was killed May 6th after a police chase on the northwest side. His family disputes the police allegation that Reed fired a gun at officers first before the shooting. The daily protests over Reed's case and other cases involving police are expected to continue downtown this evening. Former Purdue star Drew Brees apologizing for what he calls insensitive comments about police brutality protests. The Saints quarterback was asked about his opinion on players kneeling during the national anthem once the NFL season begins this fall. Brees said that disrespecting the national anthem is not just about showing respect to the military, but also anyone who sacrificed for this country, including those in the civil rights movement. A number of people, including some of his own teammates, criticized the comments as tone deaf during the ongoing nationwide protests. Today posted to Instagram an apology from Brees. He says he is an ally to the black community and recognizes he should do more listening and less talking. If you've got a student loan, watch your email carefully. Next, how some scammers are trying to take advantage of people following a court settlement of a major student loan case. And the sun is out right now, but that's going to change in just a few hours. Meteorologist Todd Clausen tracking some more storms for our afternoon. He'll be right up after this commercial break. You're watching the news at noon on RTV6.
100, 850, 50, 54.
Breaking news moments ago, Mayor Joe Hogsett announced plans to remove a Confederate monument currently located in Garfield Park. The mayor says the monument dedicated to Confederate soldiers who died at a Union prison camp in Indianapolis will be removed in the coming days. The city is identifying a source of funding for the removal. It's expected to cost between $50,000 and $100,000. The monument was commissioned in 1912 in Greenlawn Cemetery to commemorate Confederate prisoners of war who died at Camp Morton in Indianapolis. But in 1928, public officials active in the KKK decided to move the Confederate monument to Garfield Park to make it more visible. But again, Mayor Hogsett now says that monument will be removed. A central Indiana company had to settle a federal case over student loans that it offered, and now they're the subject of a scam. But as Tim Maniscalco with the Better Business Bureau tells us, con artists outside that company are the ones trying to rip you off.
This one involves actually a local company, Navient, and they are one of the largest student loan providers in the country. They have millions of people that they give student loans to. They actually just settled with the government on a lawsuit, and the lawsuit really has nothing to do with how much people owe for their student loans, but the scammers are coming on and they're giving people who have student loans with this company calls or emails or contacting them in some way, and they're saying, hey, your student loan has been forgiven. It's actually been transferred to the Department of Education. But in order to get your loan actually forgiven and transferred over to the Department of Education, you have to pay a small fee. So people are paying this fee thinking that, hey, I'm going to get my loan completely forgiven. I'm going to be out from underneath it. All I have to do is pay this small fee. Well, they're soon going to learn that their loan payment is still due, that was just a con artist. They're playing off this settlement that Navient just entered into with the government. And once again, that has nothing to do with what people actually owe. So if you do get called and they claim that they are from Navient and that your loan has been forgiven and that you have to pay a fee, don't fall for it. Don't answer the email. Don't answer the call. Just hang up and go on. That is not what's happening here. So just be on the lookout for that one.
Tim, thank you. We have more ways to avoid scams and hold on to your money right now at our website, theindychannel.com. We are taking a live look at the Circle City right now, a view to our north. Todd, the sun is shining, but you say that's not a good thing, actually.
You know, it's kind of a trade-off. You got to think of the sunshine as kind of fuel for these storms to kind of develop once again this afternoon. There's still enough instability around Meredith that I do think we're going to fire up some storms, and we still have some remaining actually from this morning. They've just kind of shifted their way a little further down to the south compared to where they were earlier this morning when they were a lot more widespread. Here's a live look at Storm Team 6 radar, and you can see one of those light rain showers is over in the Rushville area, and there were some damage reports this morning from those storms in Rushville, and some hail reports very early this morning up to our north. And wind and hail will be the two main threats, I think, as we get into the storms this afternoon. Some thunder rolling through Seymour right now with very heavy rainfall. This does impact Interstate 65, and then you can see some storms over towards North Vernon as well. But that's all we have right now. But you see these breaks in the clouds starting to appear. They should become more plentiful throughout the course of the afternoon hours. And as we go over into the afternoon hours now, or continue into the afternoon hours, we will see more storms start to flare up. Now, the best chance of the storms will be in the green area that you see on the left-hand side of your screen. That's a marginal risk for severe weather from the Storm Prediction Center. As I mentioned, winds and hail, the two main threats. Not really concerned about the tornado threat with this system and setup that we have. But also, while flooding doesn't make a storm severe, it could be an issue for us going forward throughout the day, as a lot of these storms are going to be feast or famine. It's going to be heavy downpours or not really much at all. So the storms will flare up throughout the afternoon hours. The TrueCast isn't showing as much in the way of action as we go throughout the day as it was earlier in the morning. And the further north you are, probably the less likely that you will have the storms in your area. But just know if you have plans outside, you're all going to deal with the heat and humidity. But some of you will have to contend with some isolated storms throughout the course of the afternoon hours. Temperature-wise, we are sitting currently in the 60s, 70s, and 80s across the area. Everybody's up into the 70s and 80s now. 76 in Martinsville and in Indy. 81 is the current temperature in Lafayette. The humidity is still around, but with a little more in the way of cloud cover, at least compared to yesterday. The highs today will only be in the low to mid 80s compared to the upper 80s that we saw for your Wednesday. Tomorrow, partly to mostly cloudy skies, just the chance of a few spot storms in the forecast for tomorrow with temperatures in the mid 80s. In fact, TrueCast isn't really picking up a whole lot, but I do think there'll be enough instability with a front coming through that there could be a few showers and storms come tomorrow morning. But the weekend looks absolutely terrific. The humidity comes way down. We have plenty of sunshine once we get into Saturday afternoon. There could be a little bit of cloud cover Saturday morning, but the overnight lows go back down into the 50s. That will be a nice refreshing change before more tropical-like weather arrives Tuesday and Wednesday. Meredith, as we'll have to watch what the remnants of what is currently Tropical Storm Cristobal, which is down near Guatemala, starts to lift through the Gulf of Mexico, expected to make landfall along the Gulf Coast on Monday, and then we'll see if we get into some of that rain with the heat and humidity as well.
All right, Todd, thanks. And this is a live look downtown from IMS. We will be right back with a bit more in a moment. You're watching the news at noon on RTV6. CERF.org.
All right, a few storms starting to flare up here again across central Indiana, mainly down in southern locations. As you can see there from Seymour over towards the Greensburg area, I am expecting no additional storms now that we're starting to get into more in the way of sunshine to flare up. And some of those storms could be spot strong to severe. We are under the marginal risk for severe weather, and Kevin Gregory will be in here shortly to walk you through the afternoon and evening hours. Tomorrow, still some spotty storms, still warm and humid, and then a new air mass works in for the weekend. It's less humid. Still warm with temperatures in the 80s, Meredith, but plenty of sunshine.
Todd, thank you. And thank you for making RTV6 your choice for news. We hope to see you back here at 5. Have a great afternoon.